Hi everyone, I'm Katrina and today I'm going to be doing a spoiler-free review of Godsgrave by Jay Kristoff, the second book in the Nevernight Chronicle. I also have a spoiler-filled discussion video with my lovely friend Piera Ford, which I will have linked in the description for those of you that have read Godsgrave and want to get into all the nitty-gritty details. I was sent early copies of Godsgrave by the author, so thank you Jay, you're a legend. I'm eternally grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As I mentioned, this will be a spoiler-free review for Godsgrave, but because it is the second book in a series, there will be spoilers for the first book. So if you haven't read Nevernight, I will do a very vague overview of my thoughts so you can see how I enjoyed the book without being spoiled. After that, I would advise not watching this video unless you don't mind being spoiled for the first book in the series. The first book in the series, Nevernight, follows Mia Corvair as she joins the Red Church, which is a school for assassins. She is seeking revenge on the men responsible for her father's death, and she decides to join the school in order to kill them with her own hands. There's also some magical elements, lots of world building. It is an incredible first book, and Godsgrave was an epic sequel. There is lots of snark and humour woven in with the darker themes. There is even more action and violence, and smutty scenes, with women this time as well. And I loved being reacquainted with the people that we met in the first book, as well as being introduced to a cast of fresh new faces in Godsgrave. I would highly recommend this series if you like murder, sex, anti-heroes, magic, and having your beating heart torn out of your chest and shoved down your throat right before your eyes. Maybe that's a bit intense, maybe not. This book is intense, it does not shy away from anything. So let's continue with the rest of my review. For those of you that have not read Nevernight, go and take a look at my spoiler-free review of the first book, then read that book, then come back and watch this video. Godsgrave finishes shortly after the conclusion of Nevernight, where Mia has been sworn into the Red Church as a Blade of Our Lady of Blessed Murder, which means she is an official assassin. Things aren't moving quite as fast as she would like when it comes to avenging her father's death and ending the lives of Consul Scaver and Cardinal Duomo. When Mia discovers that both men will be making a public appearance at the conclusion of the Grand Gladiati Games, Mia decides to sell herself as a slave into the Gladiatorial Collegium, and if she wins, she will have the chance to kill both men. But these games are a gladiator tournament, so things aren't going to be very easy for dear Mia. Before the start of the actual story, there is a super handy guide to all of the characters that we met in Nevernight, so it tells you who all of the characters are and what their role in the story was, which is very useful, especially for those of you that had to wait a long time between reading book 1 and 2. It isn't absolutely necessary to read, but it's just a handy way to refresh your memory before entering into the madness that is Godsgrave. Just like book 1, there is an incredible first line. Nothing stinks quite like a corpse. Ah, such sweet imagery. There are a lot of great descriptions in Godsgrave. I really enjoy the writing style, and I do think it is a little bit more accessible than the first half of Nevernight, which was very rich in the descriptions. The pace is a lot faster in Godsgrave, so we don't spend quite as much time with all of those really beautiful descriptions, but there is still a lot of world building that goes on, and I really enjoyed it. The world behind these gladiatorial games is so fascinating to learn about, but I also really like that we see even more of the politics as well. I also quite enjoyed the fact that towards the beginning of the book there are dual timelines, so we skip back and forth between the time not long after Nevernight concludes, as well as into the future a little bit when Mia is a slave. For those of you that weren't a fan of the footnotes in Nevernight, there are still some present in Godsgrave, but you'll be pleased to hear that there are far fewer than there were in the first book. I personally love the footnotes, but I do think that the amount was appropriate for the book. If there had been more, it would have really intruded upon the high action that there was and really disrupted the flow, especially if you like to read all of them like I do. I'm scared that I'll miss some important piece of information. A lot of the time it is just world building, but that does help to inform some of the other things that happen in the book, even if it's indirectly. Now, as for the actual plot, it certainly throws a lot your way. I mean, some of the things that happened were predictable, but some of them not quite so much. While I was reading, I was thinking that I had things figured out, and then towards the end, it just throws even more things your way, and it left me speechless and awestruck. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I was worried that it was gonna jump out and run away, or I was gonna have a heart attack or something. I was having quite an intense reaction to the book. And the way that it ends, there are more questions raised than answered, so that was a little bit frustrating, but at the same time I understand, because Mia is not handed anything in this book. She has to fight tooth and nail for everything, and she's not given anything on a platter nicely. Like, poor Poor Mia. I honestly finished this feeling like I had finished a marathon, but I was desperate to jump into the next marathon and read the third book because I need those questions answered. But there's just still so much of the world that we don't know, and I'm eagerly anticipating book 3. Jay, can you please write it fast? No, don't write it too fast. Like, take your time. I know it's going to be amazing. Don't rush things. But can I just travel forward in time so I don't have to go through all of this waiting, please? That would be nice. Like I said, this book is absolutely epic. Mia is in a lot of danger in this book. She's obviously fighting in these life or death gladiator tournaments, but there are some other things that come into play too. I really liked seeing her hone her fighting skills, as well as trying to explore some of the abilities she has as a Darkin. And despite her strengths, even though she is growing physically and as a character, things, like I said, they're not easy for Mia, which I really appreciated. Sure, she is a kick-ass lady, she can be a quick thinker, she has her firecracker moments and just does some really incredible and genius stunts. But this is balanced by those times when she does struggle. She shows her weaknesses, she experiences loss and discovers really hard truths. I just absolutely adore Mia as a character, as an anti-hero. Like, she's an assassin hell-bent on killing these men responsible for her father's death, and she will take down anyone that gets in her way. At the same time though, she does still feel love and compassion. She isn't this completely cold-hearted killer, and when she does feel those things, she feels them really fiercely. So I really enjoyed seeing how Mia interacted with the other characters, seeing old relationships develop, seeing new ones form. Godsgrave has made me truly appreciate Jay's ability to craft characters. These really complex and laid characters that make it kind of difficult to predict what they're going to do next. One such character is Ashlynn. Now, obviously I am still butthurt about her killing Trick in Nevernight. I don't think I could ever really forgive her for that. But at the same time, she was one of my favourite characters in Nevernight before the Trick incident. And I loved the friendship between her and Mia, so she was one of my favourite characters, so I wasn't hugely upset to see her emerge in Godsgrave. But for obvious reasons, I don't trust her, so I'm at this point where I'm curious about and questioning her motives. I'm wondering if there are any more hidden motives because she tricked everyone in Nevernight, so who knows, she might do it again. Maybe she doesn't have any more ulterior motives. I don't know. Who knows? Basically, what I'm trying to say is I like her, but I don't trust her and I don't like some of the things she's done in the past. Another thing I enjoyed was that we get to see more of Mr. Kindly and Eclipse together. The banter between the two, man, they were hilarious together. Can Jay write a spin-off series or a companion book that's literally just the dialogue between these two characters? I would enjoy that very much. I also really like that we saw some more of Mercurio. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of him. I just find him to be a really interesting character. We also meet a lot of really great new characters in Godsgrave, and I'm not going to go into any details so you can enjoy getting to know them yourselves, but I just really liked the cast of characters that we have in these books. They're just such interesting people that I really want to just get inside a lot of their heads and walk around and just learn more about them. I think this is definitely a series that I could enjoy a lot of kind of spin-off books and following some of the other characters because they're just so interesting. I also want to mention the romance. Now, I'm not going to go into much detail because of spoilers, but what I will say is that we have a female-female romance and it was great. Mia explores more of her sexuality, aka bisexuality, and I really, really enjoyed it. I thought the smutty scenes as well were great, like they will get you all hot and bothered, look forward to that. And while I really enjoyed the romance, I'm not 100% sold on it. I'm feeling a little bit conflicted. I just think that the transition into the romance happened a little bit fast, and I don't think it's insta-love, but I don't know, I'm just trying to think through it. Maybe it's kind of a product of the circumstance for Mia. Mia has gone through hell, so perhaps the romance is kind of a way for her to take her mind off of a lot of the things that are happening in the background. She can find some happiness in the romance, but also the tournaments are really high intensity, so Mia's emotions would be running high, and perhaps the development of the romance could be partly due to that. So I'm not 100% sold on it, but I just really enjoyed it, which was the main thing. Now, for those of you wondering whether I preferred Nevernight or Godsgrave, I can't really give you a straight answer, to be honest. I love both of the books so much. I did rate both of them 5 out of 5 stars, but I find it hard to choose one that I prefer more than the other because I enjoyed them for very different reasons, so I find it hard to compare them. I felt like Godsgrave differed from Nevernight in the tone, in the atmosphere. I felt like there was much more of an emphasis on the action in this book, whereas in Nevernight it really does savour in the world building and getting to know a lot of the characters. The setting is also completely different. Nevernight is predominantly set in the Red Church, so so we're learning all about Mia developing her skills in the different classes, whereas Godsgrave is for the most part in this gladiatorial collegium. The Red Church is recovering from a massacre, so it's never going to be the same. So I find it really hard to pick a favorite of the two, but I feel like combined with the different elements they both bring, it does make an amazing, amazing series. And I'm gonna say it, I think this has claimed the top spot on my favorite series of all time. I think it's taken the cake. Now I'm hungry for cake. Funnily enough, it's my brother's birthday, so I'm about to go eat cake. Yum. But that concludes my review of Godsgrave. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on the book if you read it as well, but please refrain from talking about any spoilers. If you would like to talk about some of the details that happen in the book, then definitely go over to the video I did with Piera Ford, talking all spoilery stuff about Godsgrave, and you can leave spoilery comments in that video instead. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you very soon with a new video, but until then, I will talk to you in the comments. Bye!